One, you're still listening to Ms. K and Shinaz on the show that wakes you up after waking up. This is, of course, Nust FM. And I did promise that we have a conversation for the day. And this morning, we're talking all things rugby. And in that light, we've been graced with the presence of Ara. Ara has a YouTube channel called Life and Rugby. He'll be here to break down the Rugby World Cup for us. Welcome, Ara.
Thank you so much for having me. Such a pleasure.
All right. You have a podcast. Have you been on radio before?
No, actually, I've been here before, but never,
not on radio.
Never live on air.
How does it feel being on the other side of the conversation?
It's lit, man. You know, I like it. I like it here. You know, the vibe is everything's chilled.
Absolutely. So we're talking all things rugby. Who are your rugby favorites? Let's just get into that. Who are your team favorites this year?
Okay, wait. Before, I'm wearing an All Black shirt.
There's nothing to do with anything.
It has nothing. They're not my favorites. So let me just put that out there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm actually wearing this today because the All Blacks play against France tomorrow. So I'll be supporting the Southern Hemisphere teams, you know. So since the All Blacks are playing, I was like, let's get the All Blacks out there.
Okay.
But my favorites are obviously the Springboks.
All right.
I think they can defend the title, definitely.
Okay. Now, what is different about this particular Rugby World Cup? Because we know that the last one was interrupted by the pandemic.
Yeah. Different. I think there's a lot of teams. You can see teams like France, Ireland. You know, those teams have really drastically improved. Mm-hmm. You have tier 2 nations like Italy. They are giving everybody a go. So I think it's a bit more competitive compared to the other one. And last year at the last World Cup, there was a lot of games that got cancelled because of the typhoon in Japan.
Yeah,
some sort of natural disaster. Yeah, so hopefully this year in France we can just have like a smooth sail and get all the games, you know. But I think it's more competitive this year. Definitely.
All right, let's quickly bring it back home to the Valviches.
Yeah.
All right, they are in a crazy group.
Yeah.
This group is scary even for me, and I don't know. I know very little about rugby, let me tell you.
Yeah.
But do you think that for the first time we can record a win at the Rugby World Cup?
Definitely, 110%. I think now we've got it to the point where it's not in the administrators' hands anymore.
Yeah.
For the longest time, Namibian rugby had politics, infighting, but I think this is one of the few Rugby World Cups where the team just goes and there's no infighting. It's just about the onus is basically on the players and the coaching staff. We're gonna play Uruguay, so hopefully.
Do you think we can record a win there?
Yeah, I definitely think we should. I think it's gonna be a mentality thing, but we can get that win. Uruguay is not. If they're better than that, they're not so much better than us that we can just write off that as a lose. But I definitely think Uruguay we can. Hopefully on Saturday, the guys wake up and just also try and give Italy a go. But I definitely think we're going to get that first Rugby World Cup win. We need it.
We need it.
I know we definitely need it. You did mention earlier that you will be supporting the Southern Hemisphere teams.
Yeah.
But of course, which team do you think will surprise us?
So the first one, I think Namibia would. I think the world is in for a shock with Namibia. I definitely think we are way more ready this year. But I also think, I think Ireland.
Ireland.
Yeah, because Ireland always has a great team before the Rugby World Cup, the build-up.
Okay.
But at the Rugby World Cup, somewhere they end up lacking and then they fall short. I think quarterfinals only, but I think they have a great enough team to just go. They can go all the way. They might shock us.
There's been a lot of hype around the Fiji team. What's that hype about?
Yeah, the Fiji team is also in form. Actually, they Fiji, Samoa, Tonga, but Fiji, I think there's a lot of. It's just they played in the Super Rugby Aotearoa League, so they played more competitive rugby. You know, something that. So if you're gonna play against the best, weekend in, weekend out, you will drastically
You're bound
improve.
to be the best possibly.
That's why we don't really improve like that, because we don't really get to play against.
But I think we've maybe not against the best, but we've had a lot of games at the High Stadium to try and get the team ready for the World Cup. These games, most of them are the Namibian. We didn't win.
Yeah,
but how do you think that spirit will lead us to the World Cup? Do you think we are still feeling a little bit like we can still do it? I mean,
in terms of confidence, obviously, you don't really get to see a lot of social media from the NRU that makes you dive into what the team is
Yeah.
what the confidence in the team is right now. I think something that I would encourage the media team to really look at, because as fans we have no idea like whether the players are confident, like with the vibe, the energy around the camp. We just assume. So, but based on what I know, I think it's gonna be an uphill battle, man. I would go on and say that. In terms of preparations for the domestic players with the Vintuk draft, the Alviches, with the NRE has done an impeccable job. They've had a solid season, not like winning wise, but they've played consistently. They've played all our games in the Mzansi Challenge Cup, but it's just gonna be a thing of, on that day, are you ready? Rugby is all about whether you're ready on that day, man.
Absolutely.
Not about what you've done before, yeah.
Now, I personally just feel like South Africa, or the Springboks, are the biggest team in the continent, on the continent rather.
Yeah.
But of course, I don't know much about rugby. But would you say that Namibia and South Africa are the biggest rugby teams we have on this other African continent?
Definitely, by far. Okay, not by far. I think the Zimbabwe and Kenya is edging, but yeah, there's no competition. It is alarming though, because we are starting to lose at youth level against Zimbabwe consistently. So the youth.
Sure.
It things might shape up in the future, but I might change in the future. But in terms of test rugby, like Namibia national teams and South African, we are miles ahead.
But do you think that has a lot to do with the fact that rugby is not widely played on the African continent anyway? I mean, it's a very strong sport here in Southern Africa.
Yeah.
But if you go a little bit to the top, it's not really, prominent like that.
I think tradition does play a role.
Yeah.
Because rugby there's a rich history of rugby in our country, and in South Africa is even bigger. But there's been a drastic improvement in rugby. I mean, just last year we've had Madagascar, a small country like Madagascar, an island, if I can say, fill up the entire stadium. Like, they have thousands of fans that average their games. So that's huge. I think the game is growing, and they are catching up, but also the pool that we have in South Africa, I think for now we are good, at least for the next World Cup.
All right, let's head back into the Valviches, of course. But know what? Let's go for a short musical break and then come back and talk Valviches. We'll talk some of the legends and how the team is looking now with some of the youngsters that are incorporated in the team. Let's play some music and we'll be back on the flip side. Keep listening. It is exactly 17 minutes to the hour of 10 o'clock, and we are still in studio having a very important, or rather interesting, conversation here with Mr. Ara. This is in terms of the Rugby World Cup that is underway right now, and we are getting to the second half of the conversation. Absolutely. We've moved away from the names of Burger. We are no longer talking about him, unfortunately, although he's one of the most prolific players, if not the most high-profile player we've had in the country. Now we have other people. We have a new person that has been incorporated into the team from Australia. We've also had players that have gone and come back, the likes of Mahepisa, Tjeriko, who was on injury for a very long time, didn't play rugby, but now he's back and he's at the national team. Let's talk about some of the players on the team in the Valviches and what we can expect from them. Just a little bit of a rundown.
Obviously, I think when you observe, you noticed a small pattern that Coach Alistair Couture really, and his coaching staff or management really went for players that had Namibian origins, because World Rugby changed laws about who you could represent. If you have any heritage in a certain country, you could play for them. So I think they did an impeccable job with players like getting Richard Hardwick. He plays high level rugby. Obviously it's such a blessing for Namibian rugby, but there are also guys like Divan Rousseau, played consistently in the South African leagues, also played once in the Super Rugby also. Those are notable names, guys that just came in and obviously just wore the famous blue jersey and just play with so much pride and play with so much hunger, but also I think it's also commendable or worth noting Mahepisa's story is actually very inspirational.
Tell us the story. Me, I want to hear.
No, it's like
I don't have enough tea on it. I just know a little bit.
Just a few years ago, I think it was before 2019 World Cup, and we get this long post from him, and like he has a career-ending injury, and we thought that was it, And seeing him back in the squad, this is his first World Cup.
Yeah.
I'm sure there was a lot of tears there, man. such a surreal moment. I could literally, like when I first saw that he was in the team, I was like, damn, this is a story. Need to get this guy on Life and Rugby, man. Yeah. But then, like, just coming from a career-ending injury and being part of the World Cup team, and he's not even the only one. Obert Norkier, same story, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm just glad, man. And most of the players that we have in the team are competent players. They are players who are currently playing really good rugby. Whereas in the past, I felt like we chose players a bit because they were experienced. But experience never progressed us past the World Cup win. So I think it's great that we are taking chances on young players, you know, and players that haven't been tested at that level, you know. So, yeah.
We have players on the national team such as Wanivi who have played international rugby before. Do you think that his experience on international rugby, of course, would translate on the field when Namibia takes on the teams, of course, at the World Cup?
Like I said, I don't. A lot of rugby brains are probably gonna come at me for this, but I don't. In a Namibian rugby context, I don't care much for experience. It's, are you good enough on that day? Obviously, I would say, given his experience, I would think that his leadership capabilities are, you know, just like they're just out there.
Is he still captaining the national team?
The team? No, Johan Deisel is the captain. Okay. And I would think that his leadership capabilities would just help us, you know. But in terms of experience, I don't. And in a Namibian context, for me, it's just be competent, be a good rugby player, because there are guys out there right now who are very hungry who didn't go to the Rugby World Cup. The last thing you want is someone and like, oh, that experience. Like, are you good enough? Just be good enough, that's all.
Coming back to rugby and injuries, many countries, England, New Zealand, they've all picked up, Fiji, I think also, they've all picked up a lot of injuries during the test games. Namibia is quite lucky, so to say. Do we have any injuries that we can, you know, that will hamper us? For example?
We actually got an injury just a few days ago, 2 days ago, I think.
Ooh, that's bad.
Chad Plateau is currently out injured. There are also quite a few. I think there are 3 other players that are also out out with injuries out of the Rugby World Cup. So it's quite a concern at the wing side. I don't think we have enough depth at the wing side, but they did replace Chad with Hilarious Kasteng, which is TC. I don't know if you guys know him.
Is he the Nust student?
I don't. That's Leslie.
That's Leslie.
Yes.
That's Leslie.
Yeah, TC. You can, you know, when I saw that Chad Plateau is out, I was like, man,
bummer.
Like, yeah. And then I saw the replacing with TC, and then I'm like, okay,
that can work. That can work.
Okay. We're in business again.
Okay, we'll cook. Yeah.
But honestly, I played rugby for a short while, and I was always injured. But how severe must a rugby injury be for somebody to be put out? Because most likely you are likely to get hurt every single time.
Yeah.
What is the criteria between, listen, I can't do it anymore, and I can go a little bit longer?
I think
for you, for example, you've played rugby as well.
Yeah, I think it's as a player you always push yourself.
Yeah.
But now at the level where these guys are playing, you can push yourself as much as you want, but when the doctor does his medical test on you, he will just plain and bluntly tell you you're out for 6 weeks. And
so
little your recovery process might be faster, but they're not gonna put you at harm's way. And I know World Rugby's one of World Rugby's biggest thing is player safety. Player safety is one of World Rugby's biggest.
Even with a game, a contact sport like rugby, like, what are the chances people will not get hit? Come on.
Definitely. But hey, you know, these guys are putting their body on the line. I just hope they come back with that Rugby World Cup win, please.
I agree.
A few weeks ago, Ms. K and I were having a conversation, more like a light one, about how we feel that rugby friendlies maybe we should do away with, because there's always injury. So you say you play a friendly in anticipation for the World Cup, for example, here at the Hage Geingob Stadium, and then you get injured. Now you're out of the big game that you were preparing for. How do you feel about rugby friendlies,
for example, or these test thingies?
Oh, bro, it's test rugby we need.
Okay.
We need test rugby. We need to be playing with it. And also, in terms of injuries, right? If you're counting on your 33, then you don't have a good enough squad for the Rugby World Cup.
Yeah, I agree.
You need to have, as a Rugby World Cup playing union, you need to build a pool of players. Whereas if someone gets injured, you have someone to replace them. And I'm telling you right now, some players are irreplaceable, but they have to be replaced. They have to be replaceable.
Yeah.
You know, because at the end of the day, injuries are not planned. So I think playing warm-up matches are important because they prepare you, and you need to know like what you need to work on before the main event comes. So we need to play them, and we just need to make sure that we have a pool of players to select from if injuries come. Yeah.
Right, I think it's time for us to let you go, but let's quickly then break down who's leaving the group stages, who's making it to the semi-finals, and of course, what does the final for the World Cup 2023 look like for you?
Okay, we are definitely, I think we booked our the return date. We are coming after the Uruguay game. We are definitely coming home, Namibia. I don't think we'll make it to the quarterfinals.
Okay.
But I think we'll come home happy with the Rugby
Yeah.
World Cup win. I think, you see, with rugby, it's hard for there to be a surprise like Japan and South Africa a few years ago, because the gap between the tier 1 nations and the tier 2 nations are so wide. Because it's no like, yo, there's going to be a shock. There'll probably be one, and I don't see it happening much. So
what's your final prediction?
Yeah, I think Rugby World Cup winners, Springboks. A team that might win it other than the Springboks is Ireland for me.
The All Blacks are far back on your list. I see. Is there a reason for this transition?
You know, respect for the All Blacks, but I just don't. I'm such a big All Blacks fan. Respect, you know, you can never count them out. I just don't see them winning this Rugby World Cup. I would be very humbled. I've gotten it wrong, guys. Especially with the domestic league saying Kudus was going to win it and then United won it. But I just don't think the All Blacks will win the Rugby World Cup this year. Yeah.
All right, so there we have it. Predictions looks like the Springboks once again, Siya Kolisi and the team will make it to the final. But we leave it at that, and we'll be back on the flip side, of course, to sign off and say our goodbyes. This was Nust FM. It was Miss K and Shinaz as well as Ara.